What up, fam? Today I had on Justine Benanti, aka Magic Bean. Man, I love Justine. She is such a unique and incredibly authentic human. Somehow we start the episode talking about orgasms, so if that doesn't hook you, I don't know what will. Her journey from archaeologist to a community consultant is epic. Justine's expertise in community building combined with her unique experiences adds a truly distinct flavor to her approach. With over a decade of crafting and spearheading community initiatives, Justine's portfolio spans from networking events and wellness programs to art exhibits and one-of-a-kind experiences. She is a super connector and a big-time supporter of conscious business, brands, and mission-driven movements. We talk about her experience of coming out as bisexual and polyamorous in public form, the role that Web3 plays in community building, and how conscious business plays a role into all of this. This was seriously so fun. We bridged the past and the present, the physical and the digital. I want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of today's show, The Kin, which is a membership network, accelerator, and workspace for conscious entrepreneurs. I'm a big fan and encourage you to check out thekin.co. That's THEKINN.co. Guys, if you like the show, please share with a homie or on social media and definitely subscribe. It truly means the world to me, and you're helping to be a part of this consciousness revolution that we're experiencing today. Enjoy the show.
Yeah.
It's gonna go all over the place.
It is. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna go all over the place. I'm like,
it's funny because I'd planned to listen to all 3 episodes last night, and then but I wanted to just like do some research, and then there's something about maybe today being the Lionsgate portal. I just cried for like 4 straight hours last night. I like
holy
could not
shit,
stop crying.
Wow.
And I was just like in it. Yeah, there's been a lot of grief cycles this summer, and so I was just like. Yeah, so I am completely unprepared, but which means I'm the most prepared.
That's perfect.
But sans orgasm.
Well, that's great. Well, here's the thing. For context, we started already. Just in case.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question I ask everybody is, what was your last oh shit moment? And I feel like you just answered it. That you literally cried last night for 4 hours.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was just something, I think either I'm taking a new supplement that I don't know about or something is just hitting my system differently. But yeah, I've had quite a few grief moments of like deep heart tenderness this summer. And I just really wanted to call my Nana last night, and she's passed for the last 7 years. And I just I hit a new grief level for like remembering her. And it was just like 4 hours of straight release. Wow. So beautiful, so cathartic, so grateful for moments like that. And and I called like my godmother, and she talked me through it, and she just connected me to my angels. She's the White Witch is what everybody calls her. She is a very special human, and it was just exactly what I needed last night. So as a result, I did not get to listen to your 3 most popular episodes. Well, but know that my intention was.
An incredible experience, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you, too, about, I saw your post that you said that you felt like you had an energy shifting and there's like something brewing, and usually what that means, like, you don't really know what that means, but something's about to happen.
Yep.
And it's gone in different directions in the past. So we don't know what that is, but that also then led into these 4 hours of grief that you had.
Absolutely. Like literally posting that on Instagram, which is, it's so silly because like a post on Instagram, but somehow just sharing that with the world and with my friends and my community, it literally like the second I hit post is when I started to cry. It was just like this release of, I think the vulnerability of saying in the post, like, oh, like, is it a new human in my life? Is it a baby? Like I'm egg freezing in the fall. Like that's been super present for me. You know, I'm desiring a life partner and to create a family with someone. And so to share that sort of very publicly is always a vulnerable and intimate moment, especially when you're like telling the internet that you don't want anyone to like talk to you about private stuff like that, like the strangers. And then at the same time, you want the people who love you and know you to have that kind of information, because also they might know somebody, you know. At my birthday last year, when I turned 35, I had 150 friends at my friend's property in Ojai, and I shared a speech actually about love and what it means to me and what turning 35 meant to me, and this like arbitrary threshold that I had created for myself of like, when I was younger, if I didn't have X, Y, and Z by 35, then my life would be worthless. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of this mentality that I had growing up. And then here I was, 35, in front of 150 of my friends, in basically naked in this giant like tulle blue robe with a huge crown on my head. And it was just like the most magical moment of my life. And I didn't have any of those things, but I had something so much better. And I couldn't imagine my life in any other way. And I said it into the crowd. It was like, if I died in that moment, I would die living a fulfilled life and have no regrets. And there are certain things that still are on my plate that I do desire to have. And so,
of course. Are you afraid of dying?
I'm not afraid of dying
at all.
I'm afraid of dying because I want to live so much, because I love life so much, but I'm not afraid of dying.
So it's not necessarily a fear of dying. It's just you kind of don't want to.
Yeah,
sometimes I think
I'm
about
not,
that. I'm
it's not that I'm afraid. I'm not ready to.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not ready to.
Right.
Because life is just so fucking awesome.
So fucking awesome, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever have was there a moment in your life that caused you to lose your fear of death? Because that usually happens to a lot of people that have no fear, whether that is in a near death experience or in a sort of altered consciousness state or whatever it may be, you know?
I've had a few altered conscious moments for sure, but my whole life actually changed when I met death through my grandma. So 7 years ago is kind of like, I call it pre-Nana and post-Nana life, kind of like pre-COVID, post-COVID. Pre-COVID, my life was, I was an archaeologist, I was living as an academic, I was living a very unaligned life, even though I'd wanted to do that since I was 5 years old. And I was living a life of kind of like just a very traditional path. I didn't have any other options available to me because I didn't know to think outside the box, even though I was already outside the box compared to other people in what I'd chosen as a profession. But then my grandma, she got terminal cancer. And so I stopped my PhD and I took care of her for a year full time. And in the process of witnessing her pass away, and then in that moment of her actual passing and holding her hand, I didn't know what energy reading was at the time. I was not at all in this woo-woo world that we are now, or that I am at least in now. But I physically felt the love that my Nana had created in her life and that was in the room with us leave with her to the other side when she passed. Like, I physically felt it go. And in that moment, I realized the only thing that we take with us to the other side is love. It's the only thing that transcends time, space, and dimension. Mm-hmm. Like, you can love someone that you haven't seen in 50 years. Still, like, your heart pangs for them, right? Like, you could love someone theoretically in another planet, like if they go to space. Like, that's the only thing that does that besides light. And so I had so much peace in knowing that when I felt that from her or in that moment. And so if that's the only thing that matters, it was the only thing I wanted to dedicate my whole life to. And I reoriented my entire life after that. It took a few years, but towards the creation of love, because that's my life's purpose now.
Love that.
And so it gave me so much peace knowing that that is the next chapter.
So, love that. I was very, very close to my grandma as well. And she actually came and she visited in a dream last night, and I'm trying to think if it's happened ever since she passed.
When was it that she passed?
So she passed earlier this year. And so it hasn't been that long. And it was really strange because the dream, she didn't really talk. My mom brought down the back of her shirt. Mm-hmm. And she had tattoos on her back, and she fucking hated tattoos. So, when I got tattoos, like I hid them forever.
Right, I know that. I remember that feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so she had these symbols, and I was like, whoa, interesting. So I wrote down a couple of the symbols that I did remember, and I started doing like mass amounts of research around them, obviously, and now I'm hoping that she comes back. And,
totally. But I love that.
She was, I just loved it. She was like the most accepting human of me. She was like the biggest fan of me, and I just loved it because she empowered me to be me very much, you know.
Yeah. Same.
I feel like we're both. I feel like we're both very lucky in terms of the families that we've grown up with and the love that we've received. You know, the more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, you said that you have. What did you say about a morning ritual that you didn't get to do? Come on, share with us. Right before we started recording, you're like, I have a morning ritual that I didn't get to do this
I didn't
morning.
Get to do it this morning because I had a work call, actually. But because I also was a sex, love, and relationship coach for 4 years. Uh-huh. So I got in the practice of studying Tantra to have an orgasm before I was coaching. And then I would dance to this very specific song from Daybreaker. You know Daybreaker, right? Yeah, Sober Sunrise Dance Party that our friends created. One of my favorite events. But this song, it's called Open Your Eyes, and it's all about love and choosing love and open your eyes to the day. And so I have an orgasm, And then I listened to this song and I danced my face off. And I didn't get to do it this morning.
We're off. So it's all fucked up.
I know. No, when I'm doing something important like this, like a coaching call or a presentation or like something that I like really need to get jazzed about, that's when I do it.
Orgasm, dance party, then you get into it.
Yeah. So I'm going to do it after this.
Which is so fun.
Yeah. So you're like, where'd Justine go? That's so weird. Dance party in the bathroom.
It would definitely, I would guarantee that if it happened on the podcast, it would improve the ratings of the podcast. That's for
I
sure.
did ask you what your most popular episode was. It turns out it's going to be one with an orgasm on it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is so funny because it's literally the opposite, like for a man. Like if
totally.
I have to get all jazzed up about something.
That's true.
Right? Even like working with my Kundalini energy.
Right.
Like I just recently did a thing where I did 40 days straight of Kundalini meditations every morning. I had never done it like straight like that.
Right.
In fact, for a long time I had, I had practiced Kundalini many times in the past and I didn't really love it. It's just, it can be very tiring and exhausting. There's very repetitive, lots of repetitive breath and body movements, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then so when I decided to do it for 40 days in a row in a sort of like a shortened manner, I fucking loved it, Justine. Like I got so much energy from it. It totally honed down my sexual energy. Because as a man, you're kind of like, you just want to have sex all the time, right? Yeah. And like, you're basically like, you're just like, that's your life force energy, right? So if you have an orgasm, like you're giving away your life force energy. You now have less energy to create. It's like, it's so wild. It's the opposite,
It is the opposite. That's true. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
That's true.
So with this Kundalini stuff, like I had actually, what's odd is it was the least desire to have sex that I'd had for a long time, but not in a bad way. I was like, oh, I'm turned off. It was more so it's honed in. Right. I can concentrate, I can focus, I can create. And then if I need to activate my sexual energy, then it's super activated.
Right. It's like available to you. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just so interesting how the human body is.
The human body continues to amaze me every fucking day.
Yeah.
Truly.
I love it. I had a feeling that I wouldn't have even gotten into my first question and we're like, but that's just how it's going to go.
I love it.
What is your definition of community?
So community to me, it's a really great question. What's the formal definition? Honestly, to me, it's a feeling. One, it's something that I had never experienced pre 7 years ago, which is why I call my life literally pre and post Nana, because that whole experience changed my life in a direction. Like I would not be sitting here in LA if that had not happened. Okay. I would have gone right back to my old life, not knowing that there was space for other things to develop. And then in the process of grieving her, I got into meditation for the first time, and I joined what would become the Big Quiet and Medi Club. It was my friend Jesse Israel. You probably know Jesse. He lives here now. And it was the first time I'd ever resonated with people that were like part of something that was just something I enjoyed, instead of like I'm in college and these are my friends, or I'm at work and these are my friends, like a friends of convenience. And it's not to discount those relationships. They have their purpose and their experiences and joys, but those are like out of situational things, right? And these are like an act of choosing. And so community for me, for the first time, was a sense of belonging, right? And I'd never had that before. I always felt like the odd one out growing up. I was a tomboy. I was always the weird kid. I had a really hard time like making friends. I had like one best friend always, and then I was like a group hopper because I was so afraid to like be rejected, I think, because it had happened so many times. And so that feeling of belonging is really it's so key to the human condition.
It really is.
It's a survival mechanism, right? Like if you don't belong, it means you get kicked out and then you're dead, right? Basically. And so for me now, my definition of community has evolved into, it includes so much deep love for me and unconditional love. Like anybody I consider in my community, I would say that I have unconditional love for. Doesn't mean that they have to have it for me back, but I absolutely feel it. I feel it for you. I feel it for Oliver, who runs the kin, like all of it. And the way that I find communities work the best is when I always do this motion. I'm telling you, I speak with my hands, but like it's like this self-fulfilling, self-sufficient experience. And so communities that succeed and thrive, and ones that I've created and co-created and been part of, the ones that really grow are the ones that like every member is supporting each other. Like I have a need, I'm going to present it to the community. Who in the community can meet that need, or like give me someone in their network to meet that need? And then I hire, work with, et cetera, support them. And then everybody else has seen that I'm coming to them, right? And then they come back to me for when they have something, right? And it becomes this sort of like exactly self-supporting mechanism. And so everybody feels like everybody's on the same team.
So there's unconditional love. There's this sort of self-supporting mechanism.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this feeling of everyone on the same team.
Right.
Now, at the same
core
time,
values too, of course, are important.
Shared core values.
Yeah. Like Burning Man, perfect example, right? The 10 principles. They're not rules. They're principles. All the communities that I've created natively, none of them actually have like formal rules or boundaries in them. Like when you're in community, some people call it a blob. Like we all sort of weave in and out of them.
Yeah.
I think of them as more like Venn diagrams. So Burning Man is one of them. Reality is another one. Summit is another one. And all of, like the more that we're in, the more in the core of the community you are, and then you're sort of on the periphery. But everyone sort of has the same value system, right? Aligned life, freedom of expression, conscious awakening of some kind, conscious business, all of that,
Hey guys, I just want to remind you, if you want to find more content like this, you can visit sebastiannaum.com. That's Sebastian, Naum.com. You can also get a ton of other marketing resources from myself and my agencies, ranging from SEO to social media, influencer marketing, branding, web development, and more. Again, that's sebastiannaum.com. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Okay, so one thing that you said there that really like lit up the light bulb for me is the sense of belonging, right? Because this is something, like you said, it's so crucial for everyone. Everyone has that.
Yeah.
That's something that's been important for me, a theme in my life. It's something that I've weaved in and out of, like the feeling of belonging and the feeling of not belonging. And then one thing that I've realized more recently is that like random triggers. I'm always trying to notice like what's triggering me, right? I'm sort of like almost
awareness
like
is key.
like it's like I'm almost like a growth mindset junkie sometimes, like self-development junkie, which is like to a fault sometimes. So sometimes like, okay, relax, like you're not a self-development project,
Right.
Like sometimes you have to like ease off. But it's good to be able to be aware constantly, like why did that feel off? Like why am I hurt, or why am I this or that? And I've noticed with the whole sense of belonging thing, right? How random things have triggered an insecurity related to sense of belonging. And so I think that one thing you said was important, though, is ultimately, though, that sense of belonging does have to come from within, right? Because like you said, like sometimes not everything is reciprocated. One thing I've noticed, at least from your sort of being part of some of your communities, and whether that has been like groups of several hundred people on WhatsApp or on whatever it may be, it's like you are always giving, right? So people are asking for different things, and it seems like you are, obviously you're a super connector. You've got this magical power that you know everyone and everything in that sense, and like someone for everything. And so you're always giving resources and providing resources. And so there's no way that all that you give is equally, quote unquote, reciprocated. So that doesn't have to be something that really, right, constitutes to the definition of community necessarily, right?
Right.
Because you may be giving more than you're receiving.
I think it's less about like how much am I giving, how much am I receiving. It's more about that people know that you're interested in being supported and supporting, right? And so some people are just able to give more, and some people, it's always an ebb and flow, right? I don't think there's like a hard and fastness to it. And some people just always hang out in the periphery, and that's also okay. But they're also witnessing the people that are doing that. And they're like, oh, this community really cares about each other. These people are friends. And my community, LA community with friends in particular, I think one of the reasons it grew and sustained itself so connectedly during COVID, which is when I started it right before COVID hit, is because a lot of other communities, inherently because they're so big and like people are spread out all over the place, they don't actually meet up very often, right? Like there's like little pockets of people. But I found with this particular one, when COVID first ended the first time, one of the things that I did very consciously was I hosted something for 3 months straight, like literally almost every single night, because I wanted all of those people to have an opportunity to meet in person and like find their own means of connection to each other. Before that, I was the only common denominator, and people needed to see that like these are humans with hearts and faces that I can relate to on my own. And now, like the community has self-actualized itself, which is what happens when those things, I think, those factors are in play. Because all I do now, people are like, oh, how are you this? Da, da, da. All I do is hype woman, right? Like, I don't actually have to do very much. Like, I'm active in the chats because I'm always supporting people, like showing the other people in the community, like, these are people worth supporting.
Sure.
And then they get that same sort of like feeling back. Oh, you're right. They are. And I'm going to get that back from them too. And so I'm more inclined to do that myself. And so I don't really do that much. I just like make the little micro moments of that.
Yeah.
And then people do it themselves. They make their own events. Unjam, perfect example. Like, that started on my roof, the Song Circle in LA, with Colin, my co-host. And he's taken it and like, it's blossomed into the most heart-connective experience ever. And it's one of the things I'm actually the most proud of.
That's amazing.
People now invite me to, and they're like, "Oh, have you been to Unjam yet?" I'm
No
like,
way.
Yes, I have been.
I started that shit, yo.
I started it, yeah.
That's
it started
amazing.
because I was insecure about singing in front of my friends.
That's so cool.
It was an edge.
Love
to
that.
Me. Yeah.
That is so cool. One of the things that I've noticed is that when you are being hype woman and you are constantly promoting, whether it is professional services, somebody like a practitioner or a brand or a movement or a business, it's virtually always very much mission driven, right? So it's always, it's a lot of what this podcast is about, and conscious business, right?
Yeah.
But all of these businesses that you're promoting are typically very much conscious businesses or mission driven, and the practitioners, all these things, right? So do you have, first of all, like, what does that mean to you? How important is that to you in regards to community? And then do you have like a criteria that you sort of like figure out, okay, this is worth promoting because I do feel that there's enough mission in this, or there's enough impact, or this not so much type thing?
Great question. Also, I'm going to shift the language a little bit, just because words are spells, right? And so saying the word promoting, I'm going to shift it to say something like supporting.
Supporting, yeah.
Because promoting to me, like, I think of like a club promoter or something like that. Like, what I'm doing, or the way that I interpret it at least, is like supporting the people that I care about and their companies and their missions and things like that. Because I don't want people to ever feel like I'm selling them on something, because that's actually not my motivation at all. Like, I'm merely presenting things on a silver platter, and if this resonates with you, it's come from a trusted resource that I know, and then have at it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of how I think about it. And so with the people that I'm supporting or companies that I'm excited about, being a conscious entrepreneur is really important to me. I would consider myself one. Being conscious about the environment, social issues, all of those things. Like, you can't live in this world and not have a stake in something like that at this point. Like, audiences, communities, customers, however you want to look at it, none of them are resonating with businesses that don't do that anymore, right? Like, they're just not going to succeed. And
especially Gen Z too, as it's coming in. It's like, it's just, that's the way of the world. Like, you better get with it.
Exactly.
Like the traditional capitalist businesses, like you're gonna have to change.
It's the top-down sort of mentality, and I'm always like, well, why don't we just ask customers or the audience or the community what it is they want? So many people just tell you what you want, and in my experience and what I do in my business is I always ask people, and they want to care. They want companies and brands that care about them. Yeah, and they care about what they want. And so. It's funny that that all of my companies or things that I'm supporting are mission driven, because most of it is I'm actually just supporting the person that I believe in behind it. And I've obviously done my research. I wouldn't like promote or support something that I didn't believe in at all. But I haven't been to something or like an event or a music show or something like that wasn't supporting somebody I know personally in like 3 years, probably. Like, I haven't just like gone to a concert, because every night of my life, pretty much, is not an exaggeration, is doing something to support somebody I know. And they're all fucking amazing offerings. Like, my life is so full of different activations and like such a variety of things, but they're all doing something really fucking cool in this world. And I want to show them that I care and that I'm supporting them. And I want to like other people to know, because again, that's how communities thrive. Like, if we all see each other at one another's things, it's important for the health of any group, right?
So like, that sounds like an ideal world, right?
But we're building it. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, we have to be
building it. There may be people, whether they're listening or just out there in general, like that. A lot, maybe they don't have the resources or even the people around them to do those things, right? So you're going out there and you're having to support a brand of some sort, whether you're buying an article of clothing or you're consuming something. And of course now, so like maybe I can even bring it into the consumption aspect, right? So that's in terms of artists and events, you're basically supporting at least somebody you really, you know them, you know what they stand for, et cetera.
Yeah.
Now, if you're gonna go eat something, right? Now, do you have like a criteria there where you're like, you like to know who is behind the brands maybe that you're consuming and stuff like that and what they stand for?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny. Two things came to mind actually with that question. One is I actually haven't bought a new piece of clothing in 4 years since I started.
Really? In 4 years?
I buy them on occasion if I'm in another country because it's like something you just can't get.
Gotta buy underwear or something like that. Or,
yeah.
It's like some...
I don't wear underwear.
You're like, I also haven't worn underwear in 4 years.
Actually, since COVID started.
You know?
Hopefully no one and any of my clients see this.
Hopefully all of them.
All of them. But I've hosted a clothing swap once a season because I believe in sustainability so much. It's so important to me.
I love that.
Fast fashion is so fucking destructive.
Right.
And I love Amazon. I know it probably negates all the things that I'm doing with my clothing swap and the other ways that I help the world. I love convenience too. Like I get it. I am a human and there are some hills you are willing to die on. Like I'm still going to use a microwave. Sorry, my friend Danielle. Like most people in LA hate microwaves.
I've actually done a good amount of research on microwaves. There's actually nothing wrong from my understanding.
Great.
So
it's not a hill
literally
I'm
just
dying
heating
on.
up water molecules. Like,
okay.
This is now if you putting your head, if you're sleeping next to a microwave that's on, not a good thing.
Great.
Turn the microwave on, you leave. Like, from my understanding, because I had this whole thing where microwaves are the devil too, but they're actually not from. But anyway. Yeah. So we digress.
Right. So anyway, so the hills that you're willing to die on.
So what convenience? So what do you buy from Amazon that's convenientness, for example?
I love Thrive Market actually because Thrive Market has like all these really sustainable brands in a place that I can just get them in one place, right? Like I trust my friend who started the company. I trust Thrive Market's mission. They do so much research. They have their own brands that all meet sustainability, environmental, et cetera. Amazon definitely does not do that, but it's convenient because all the just like little things I need for the house, it's all in one place.
Yeah.
But I try to negate it with things like my clothing swap, which people love. Like it's a community famous event. And so, and on the other side, the other thing that came up for me is I saw this film recently, Cowspiracy and Seaspiracy. You know,
I've seen them both. Yeah.
My friend is working with them on another film to be released, which I saw. I won't tell too much about the film, but basically it led me down this rabbit hole because I am a meat eater, but I'm a conscious meat eater, right? Like I don't eat tons of meat. I don't particularly like plant-based meat at all. Like I think there's too many chemicals in them. And like
it's actually worse.
It's
way worse.
Really worse for you.
Yeah, it's the worst.
I'm not a scientist on that side of it. But you know, things like that matter to me, and what I put in my body particularly is really important to me.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm an Erewhon slut. But what the film did do to me, and I was really shocked, is I went down this rabbit hole of where my meat comes from, not from like a pasture-raised, grass-fed type of way, because I try to do as organic and grass-fed as possible. Yeah. But the spirit of the animal, which I'd never thought about. It's so amazing how your mind can change over time with just like more facts. It doesn't happen for a lot of people, which is kind of crazy. But this film was showing me that like even the most consciously raised animals, still most of them go to slaughterhouses, which is just like part of the process. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I only want to support farms that actually don't use that, because that seems like the energy of that animal is now I'm ingesting it and it's coming into my spirit. And I want it to be as like happy and healthy as possible. And so I found a farm in Texas that does wild game only, and it's like everything is done on site, like dressed on site in the field. And so there's no like contamination. It's wild.
So how does the animal die?
It's a one-shot kill, which is like the most ethical way in my research rabbit hole to kill or to eat and kill an animal, because they don't know what's coming. There's no like aura of like, you know, death in the air basically, right? For them, because they're super conscious things, right?
No, I totally believe in that aspect of the energy that's going into the animal.
They know that they're going.
Yeah, you know? I mean, I'm sure there's a difference between if they've had like this sort of a dark energy their entire lives versus maybe just the last second, but then also if they had never had it at all, which is as they're...
Right. Most farms care because it toughens to meet up at the end if they get scared. Like, that's a thing.
Correct.
And I'm like, no, I just want... It's just funny how the mind evolves. And like, now that's a hill I'm willing to die on. It turns out now. So, yeah, it's really fascinating. So stuff like that really matters to me. Like the practices of different companies,
the practices, the people that stand behind them, which is something that I think 25 years ago, there was not so much of people wanting to know who was behind the company, or like understanding who the CEO was, or who's
blind
and
faith.
Now it's very much exposed. In fact, there's many people that have had companies that are like, oh shoot, I actually have to go be on the forefront now because there is no face to the brand. Like brands need faces now, right? And which I think is a beautiful thing. I think it's awesome that it's gone that way.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go back. This is super fun. Like I'm just gonna.
We're going in a lot of
different.
different.
This here. I always.
We're like talking about the spirits of animals.
Well, it's good. I have exactly. I have like questions, right? And I'm like, oh, we are all over it. But this is fun because we're gonna talk about all the topics that we want to talk about.
Totally.
And this is our conversation.
Yeah.
So in terms of going back to the community aspect, in Adlerian psychology, the sense of community is crucial to good mental health, to well-being. Mm-hmm. Now we've learned about, like over the last decade, about the blue zones in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And how if you live in a blue zone, you are going to live significantly longer and healthier and happier. There's 5. I think there's one in Costa Rica. Yep. There's one in Japan.
There's one in Sardinia.
There's one in Sardinia, Italy. There's one in Loma Linda, California. Super random.
Where is that?
Yes, super random. It's like a little bit. It's like inland of Orange County.
What?
So
close to us.
Yeah, Loma Linda, California. You gotta check that out.
I am.
And then I'm missing one. Sardinia, Japan. Anyway. Point is,
it'll come to
blue
you.
zones. Yeah. So with blue zones, there's several key factors. Diet, exercise, and one of the key factors is community. Yeah. So why does community make you live longer, do you think?
I think it's family and community, I think, for the blue zones, because most people in those areas, their families never leave those places, right? Like they're all still so multi-generational, and so it's that plus the community. It takes a village, right, to raise a kid. That's the phrase. Yeah. I'm personally trying to set up the next part of my life for when my partner and babies come along, to live in a village with my community. Like in Costa Rica is actually where I've been trying to do this. I'm open to other places too.
I freaking love it. I just don't Nosara keeps calling my heart.
Me too. I go every year for 6 weeks. I'll be back there in the winter. And there's so many people building, in our community, building communities with local communities and integrating. And these are the places that I want my kids to be raised, because it's exactly what you just said, diet, exercise, nature, community, family. You literally, children need the wisdom of many generations to learn from. They need access to nature. I want my kids to walk outside and go surfing with me before they go pick flowers on their way to school, and then learn about things like farming and math. And then we can go surfing again at the end of the day. That's kind of the life that I'm envisioning for my kids. And then we can come back to the States for other things. You know? But something that I also learned during COVID, which I think is related to the community and just the closeness factor. There's such a different intimacy that when you're being raised in a village, so to speak, that I think that we've lost so much, especially in a post-COVID world, the serious amount of disconnect and depression and mental health issues and all of those things. And I have suffered personally from depression probably 15 years of my life, clinical depression.
Really? That's a long time.
It's a long time. But through the use of regulated psychedelic use, thank you, mushrooms, microdosing, I was able to basically cure my depression over the last 4 years. So
really?
Yeah, it's basically non-existent for me now. It's huge deal. But what I learned, and it was rampant during the beginning of COVID, obviously, but what I learned during that process at the same time was also how important physical touch is. And I'm not talking about sexual touch.
Sure.
I'm talking about just hugs and holding people's hands and just feeling this closeness that I feel people who live in those types of the blue zones, my experience, at least having interacted with some of them, is they have that closeness. Yeah. My dad actually asked me if I was going through withdrawal from a drug problem during COVID, because I went back to take care of him for that first 4 months. Yeah. And I was like, I think I'm going through touch withdrawal. Literally I was shaking, it was just the same sort of symptoms. And I used to get 20 hugs a day because I used to go co-working before that all the time here in Venice. And then I went for 4 months. I had 6 hugs in 4 months. Like, literally. And my first hug, I'll never forget it. It was with my friend Jacob. And we cried for 10 straight minutes holding each other with like all the things. This is like in the middle of New York. COVID.
Yeah.
And it was just such a transformative moment because I was like, holy shit, I cannot live. I
just got the chills thinking about that.
Right. It was like the sheer deprivation of it was astounding.
Yeah.
And so I haven't even shaken someone's hand. I think actually Michael, outside, might have been the first person's hand I've shaken, and because I didn't think about it, but I always just ask for a hug. We do have to.
Give a hug, yeah.
Because it's so important, and I think just not enough people receive that.
Yeah.
And I think that the people who live in those areas of the world just like get that sort of intimacy and that closeness naturally, you know, because of the way that they're choosing to live, right? And so families are closer.
Yeah.
You know?
You made me think of a moment, and I still think about it every time I go on a run.
Yeah.
I will never forget because I live right by the, very grateful to live right by the water, right by Shutters in Santa Monica. And I remember I went on a run during the beginnings of COVID when we were still not supposed to even go on a run or whatever.
Right. How dare you
and
outside.
I remember crossing this human who was also on this run. And just like we looked at each other and like we like smiled at each other and like super much connected. We didn't even know each other. Like, hi, like how are you? You know, it was like this like hi human, hello. And it's funny because like now I go on a run and it's like that ain't not happening. And nobody is you know
looking up.
And I do think there was something beautiful that happened from that. That I think maybe a lot of people like forgot about. Totally. But I think that a lot of us haven't forgotten about it. And for you, at least that experience showed you how much you do need that and how much we do need it.
Yeah.
I think it is challenging to think about. So you have this beautiful vision of community and like we're talking about like a potential, like a Costa Rica type stuff, a blue zone type life and this and that. Now, a lot, like the majority of humans don't necessarily have the access to that, right? So like there's people that live in majorly, massively overcrowded cities and they work 2-3 jobs and right. So like all they're thinking about is survival, right? But even in what's interesting is if you look at like happiness indexes, like I remember like Brazil being one of the happiest places, even though the poverty levels are still very high in many areas. And one of those things, in fact, is community. So you can even be in poor places and have community. Dance is a big part of it. They dance a lot. Yeah.
Music and dance and song.
Yeah.
That's why throughout history, when people were conquered, you know, the conquering party always erases as much as they can religion, dances, traditions, music, song, because those are the things that keep us feeling alive.
Correct.
You know, they keep us interested in being alive with each other, and people find a way. If I've learned anything as an archaeologist, which is my former career, is that the human spirit finds a way no matter what happens to it. And like that has always been such a driving force of my life. Like if I'm feeling, like I said, I've had many moments of depression. I often like relate back to that thought because it's like, something always gets better at some point, right? Like hope is like the most important thing we have, I think, besides love.
It's powerful, yeah.
It's super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so even, you know, and everybody has their issues, their problems, their struggles. Some are obviously, like perspective is so important and your stuff is still your stuff, right? But even in the worst stuff, you find that the people who are the happiest, besides community, I think, is also the people can still have gratitude. It's the most, if you look at Dispenza's work, like it's the most transcendent emotion. Gratitude is the thing that you can create your own reality with, right? If you can access that emotion for the things that you have already and the things that you don't have, suddenly they're going to be there, right? Even in little bits, like it's like with hope, right?
Yeah.
Even the moment, like my grandma's passing, for example, is the most tragic moment of my life. And I have the most amount of gratitude for that experience because her gift to me was like hanging on for as long as she did and giving me space for my own life. And I got to spend every moment with her for a whole year, basically. And there's so many moments to be grateful for.
Yeah.
But like even the moments where you just find out what you're fucking made of. you know, like something that horrible and tragic, you're still like, oh my God, I'm still here. I'm still surviving. Like that's grateful to be alive. We're talking about like, are you afraid of death earlier?
Yeah.
Just the fact that you're here, right? And as someone who has in the past wanted to not be here with, you know, my depression, like I've had those thoughts many times in my life, I personally have a lot of sympathy and compassion for people who have been on both sides of that spectrum, you know? So
I think there's powerful. A lot of people on that spectrum of depression that feel like, I'm doing all these things, like, but I'm doing the gratitude work, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and it's not working.
Feels
you
like
know?
a wheel.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I get it. I've been there for sure. And my personal experience with it is honestly like we're the creators of our own reality. Like if we feel like we're doing a thing to get something back, then it's not, and it's tricky how to say it, but you have to give something or like do something without expectation or attachment to how it comes back to you, right? So it's like I give love to somebody without, it's a practice for sure.
Sure.
Without expecting that they need to love me back. It's not a requirement. It's not a necessary. It's not a need. It's just the gift of love.
High involvement, low attachment. High involvement, low attachment. So, if you can live by that, which is so difficult.
So fucking difficult.
Fully involved. You're giving it all. You're fully involved, maxing out on that. And then you're fully detached from the result. Just like with anything, whether it's with somebody with love, with a business project, with trying to get out of a depression or whatever, right? So I think that's an interesting point.
Trying to make friends. It's such a core thing. People are always like, how do you make so many friends? And it's like, you have to be a friend without expecting like the thing back, right?
That's a good point. I never thought about it in terms of
because it's like
friendship. Either
people know that you're genuinely in it, right? Or they're in their own worlds. Like people are all doing their own things. Like you can't, you know, we can have acceptance and love for that too. But people feel it when you're like trying to get something out of them, right? And so I think it's just like an energy shift. And I'll tell everybody my secret for being a great friend right now. Because people ask me
being
this
a great friend
all the time. Honestly, Siri, my secret. If someone tells me something is going on in their life or something that I want to remember, like, I'm having surgery in 2 months, you know, whatever, and I'll say, hey, Siri, in 2 months at 10 a.m., remind me to tell my friend Sarah good luck on her surgery. And I do that shit all the time. Hey, Siri, in 10 days, can you remind me to call Sharon?
What a freaking hack, man.
Because I haven't talked to her in a minute.
Yeah.
And I'll remember, you know.
I use Siri all the time for work, but that's really good for personal. That's amazing.
Literally. And people are like, how did you remember? You're so thoughtful. Siri.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Hack of the world.
We're going to be jumping all over the place, which is fun. We're already doing it. But one thing that I've noticed with community and with friends and with friendship, since we're talking about this sort of idea of, you know, a great way to make friends or whatever, right? Giving without receiving, is what I've noticed is even within communities that claim lots of inclusivity or whatever it may be, there's still lots of clickiness that happens, right? Absolutely. So it's like, it's funny because the clickiness that we experience in high school when it's like the most rampant, I still see it with like, you know, adults, like with groups of boomers, you know, or whatever, right? Like literally, it's like I see it. And it's like
I see it in our millennials like, for sure,
right? And it's with us, and it's in our. It's like, why do you think that's? Do you think that's just like human nature, or do you think that there's a way to disarm that? Because, for example, we're both part of this group called the Grateful Drafts, which is a beautiful community.
Yeah, heart-led entrepreneurs and thought leaders. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
they're just good fucking humans.
Good humans, and one thing that I've told my friends when they ask, well, what do you like about this whole Grateful Draft thing or these events that you do? I'm like, personally, I feel that there's no ego. There's a lot less, if anything, than most places that I go. Yeah. It's a bunch of fucking weirdos. Everyone's weird in their own way. I'm weird. You're weird. We're all weird.
Best ways.
Yeah, exactly. We get to be ourselves, and then there's just not that much clickiness, which I think is kind of rare.
Yeah.
What do you feel about clickiness? Do you think it's something that just naturally happens and you just can't really do away with it when it comes to community?
That's a great point, because I don't find that in the drafts as well.
Yeah.
I think that probably to some degree, like there is a biological desire to be with people who are like you, right? Like whatever that thing is, just like that's how people banded together throughout, millions of years, right? Like, oh, this is my family or this is my close unit. Like there's probably
within the community, my closer unit.
Right. Like the people that resonate with me, right? And aside from that biological need, I think probably a lot of it is unresolved, like
insecurities.
Yeah.
Right? Because clickiness is not just about the close unit.
Traumas that they haven't resolved or like a lack of self-development in some way. And that's not a judgment. It's more of like a reflection of, like if I actually examined my actions in this experience or in this scenario, like would I actually be treating this person this way?
Sure.
Maybe yes, maybe no. And so I think it's probably just like in a self-development way, like awareness space, and there's something unresolved in that space for that person particularly. And I think when you're in a group setting, certain behaviors get amplified, right? Like you want the sense of belonging, right?
Yeah.
Like if this person is doing it, I want to do the thing, which is probably what also fuels the clickiness also. So maybe that is a third factor. But in my experience, going back to like, if you just lead with X and like not expect things back, like I have many negative experiences throughout my life with cliques. Like growing up, I went to Montessori school. There was 5 boys and 5 girls. And it was still me and my friend Kareen and the girls. Like I was still outside of the main fucking clique.
Even though
five girls.
Like that is the clique.
Like that is the clique. And it was still Justine and Kareen. And so since my youngest days, I have not been in the clique. And I've just, which is maybe why, again, I became like a hopper of groups. But I think I was allowed to be a hopper of groups over time because I just like led with my heart, and some people reject it, and that's okay.
That's what you have to remember, right?
Some people really are like, wow, this person is just so blank, and I want them around me.
Yeah.
And I still have experiences as an adult, many of them where, I've been friends with some people for many years, and I support literally everything I do. They do. I'm a human. I get upset sometimes when I'm not included in things. And, and then there's times where people are like, oh, I just assumed you were invited because you get included in all the things. And I'm like, but no one invited me. And it happens a lot still. It
still happens.
It still happens.
The queen of community.
Exactly. Yeah, the mayor of Venice. It still happens. It sounds way less obnoxious when other people say it, honestly. But, we're all human. We all have feelings. Like, it still hurts. But I think that the key, and this is, again, just like, it's like a muscle learning, right? Like, you have to just keep leading with your heart.
I love that.
I don't think there's any other, that's how I would say.
Way, and I think that the more secure you are within yourself and the more you're leading with your heart, if the external is not changing for you and you're still seeing some of these clickiness things, what you end up realizing is like,
these are not my people.
This just ain't for me.
Totally. And you become like, I can still be in this space and like have fun and all the things because I'm not attached to having to be in that clique or that group or
and this person or this subgroup no longer triggers me.
Exactly.
And it's just like whatever.
It's a self-acceptance. And it's a really beautiful space to be in.
It is.
But it takes practice.
It does. And then it comes back again. It's the onion that keeps peeling, right? And it keeps coming back.
Memory.
Yeah, exactly. So vulnerability is a key, obviously people talk about vulnerability a lot to, ad nauseum, and it's like it becomes annoying, but at the same time, it's key,
biggest
right?
Thing,
As being a conscious leader, it's a huge thing.
All of it.
And I remember one of the things that stuck with me most was you came out as bisexual and polyamorous on social media very publicly. One of the ways that I really admired that in the way that you did it was because it was in such a vulnerable way, in the sense that how you explained who you were, and also that you were very afraid to show all of this, in part because you wanted to still be very much accepted and loved by the people you cared for a lot, which was your family. Yeah. And a lot of the times I think we're used to when we see people come out with certain things is like, this is who I am, everyone fuck off. Right?
Sure.
You did it very sincere, like, this is who I am, and I hope that everyone still loves me, and I'm afraid that everyone doesn't, but this is still who I am, and this is who I choose to be. So can you speak a little bit about that vulnerability that you expressed, which you did so beautifully, by the way?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's what happened last night with the vulnerable share, too. Like, when I just shared it and then I cried for 4 hours because it is such a thing to declare things publicly. Even with small but loyal audiences, you know, and friends and communities and families. And I think it goes to even what we were just talking about. Like there's this disarming factor that happens to other people when you lead with vulnerability and with your truth. People receive you in a different way, whether they intended to or not. It's like there's a human in here. Like if you forgot, I have a heart and I'm a human beating in front of you, and so that sort of like natural inclination to judge or to whatever the quick thought is like, oh no, oh my God, this person is hurting or loving or sad or whatever, or angry or whatever the thing is in front of me that they're coming to me with. And I think also so much of it is the language, like conscious communication, right? Like speaking from the I and not speaking from the we and the absolutes and all the things. Like in my experience, this is what's happening when X, Y, and Z versus like this always happens when you do blank, right? Like no one's going to respond to that, right? They get defensive. People get defensive. And, you know, the other reaction that I've always had from people when I share my vulnerable shares online or in person is what an invitation it's been for them. And that's been a really beautiful thing to receive or to witness as well. And for them, their response is to witness me being so vulnerable helps them like come to terms with some of the things that they've needed to share.
It disarms, like you said, right?
Yeah, it disarms. And so one of the things I've used social media specifically very consciously is it's so social media, as we all know, is like for all the like pretty beautiful Instagrammable moments, whatever. But like I talk about my depression a lot. Like I talk about the struggles in my life. I don't want people to feel like I just have this like beautiful, blessed life. Like I've had a lot of fucking struggles, and I want people to know that I'm still choosing to live my highest aligned truth. Despite all those other things. And it's not luck. Like maybe luck has a small part to play in how we all ended up where we are, for sure. Circumstance, I'm sure. But it's still every day waking up and saying, this is the only way that I'm going to live, because it's not actually a choice anymore. I have tasted the forbidden fruit. I have had my awakening, whatever the thing is. It doesn't have to be specific religion. All of the things, just you know that there is more to your life that you haven't been living, whatever that means to you. And so once you have that, in my experience, it's not a choice anymore. And so with the bi and the poly thing, like I was so afraid because like, even though like half my family doesn't even have social media, I was afraid that the parts that do, like people that have, you know, loved me, but also used my vulnerability against me for a long time in some cases, because, excuse me, I was always the emotional kid. Like I was always crying because I had so much emotion that I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. So I'm sure like that, you know, causes this judgment. Like, oh, there goes Justine crying again, like being emotional.
Totally. Like I couldn't even have a conversation that felt any way confrontational without crying, because I was afraid I was about to be judged and then just would like the waterworks would. So I always thought crying was a weakness. And it was like only until like, you know, 6 or 7 years ago that I realized that it was a strength, right? And so coming out to my family, one was so unexpected. It just happened over hibachi grill on Christmas Day, where my aunt was asking me about this guy that I was dating at the time, and I was like, well, slowly roll, like I don't know where it's going. And I was like, I'm dating other people, and they were like, well, who else are you dating? And I was like, well, you know, I'm engaged basically to like 7 other friends of mine. My friends and I have like had these conscious engagements to one another, and they were like, what the hell is that? And I was like explaining it, and I was like, I'm polyamorous because for me, I'm poly not in the way of like multiple sexual love, but multiple whole love. So it's like the people that I'm talking about, we've exchanged proposals as in like, I'm committing to you as a friend to love you, to love your children, to love you for the rest of your life, and vice versa. And it's been this really beautiful like acknowledgement that usually gets only reserved for people in a romantic partnership. And so I'm monogamish, I would say, in a partnership. So like the unit plays together. But poly, I would say I'm solo poly because I don't actually want to be like in a full polyamorous relationship like that. But I am time dedicated in these intimately vulnerable relationships, not sexual, but like if my friend is like, I need you right now, like one of like Jessica, for example, I'm going to fly out and spend the time with her, like the same I would with my sick child or my husband or something like that, my parent. And so they get this dedicated relationship from me in the same way that like a romantic partner would.
Really? So it's not in a sexual manner, but it can be.
It can be sometimes, but most of them are not. Most of them are not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so that was like just sharing that with my family. And then I was like, oh, but you know, and then sort of float out that I was bisexual because they asked about Priscilla, my life wife. And we've been together 5.5 years. And my life wife, yeah, she's amazing. And certainly my longest relationship. And they're like, why don't, you know, she never comes with you in places. And it's like, P and I have started recently like recrafting, like how do we present our relationship to people, because she's monogamous and in a, you know, wasn't a monogamous partnership and I wasn't. And like, how do we sort of like create narratives in public for people to understand actually what we mean to each other and still use language that resonates with both of us with separate needs, right? And so there's this really beautiful dance around, you know, just pure language and understanding. And so having explained that to my family over hibachi was so beautiful. And then my aunt started to cry because I think maybe she's gay and has been my whole life, obviously. And I think maybe she thought that she was alone in the family in that. And I never thought she was, because I've always been bi my whole life. I just never shared it because I thought my sexual life wasn't my family's business.
Okay.
Like I'm bisexual sexually, but not partnership. Like I think I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a husband is what I'm saying versus a wife. But I have a life wife. That's not sexual. Mostly. But then the most beautiful part of the whole experience was that my aunt goes, well, does anyone else have a secret to share? And then someone who I won't name on this, but someone else in my family raised their hand and was like, shared their piece. And they were like, I saw you on the limb and I wanted to come out with you. And it was just like the most beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just a moment that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
And it was just like that vulnerability of mine, like created space for him to share that too. And it was just like a beautiful moment for the two of us to be together and then to share with my whole family. And then the person I was so afraid to call or to share any of this with was my dad, because he's quite conservative in a lot of ways, even though he spent his whole life in the entertainment world. And he was the only one not with us. And so I called him on FaceTime. He was in London.
Yo, you missed the most badass dinner ever.
I was like, look, everybody else knows, like, I can't keep this from you now.
Yeah.
And he was like, how does it feel to tell me? And I was like, honestly, it's like a huge relief. I didn't know I was actually keeping it from anybody. I thought it was just not their business.
Interesting.
And he was like, well, I love you. And I don't understand most of this, but like, that man has come so far. You have no idea. So far.
That's
and he is so expectant. Now he's just like, well, all the people that you're dating, and like now he sort of like uses a lot more language than I ever thought he would. And I'm like, I'm not actually dating anybody right now. So you're overcompensating.
Just because of this doesn't mean that.
Right. So,
well, that's beautiful. I think that, I mean, these are just beautiful examples of stories that you're sharing with us about vulnerability and how that opens up the space. And obviously that all ties to community and building conscious communities. Yeah. And as a conscious leader, that also ties into building a conscious culture within your workspace and what that does for for work and business and the brand and what you're putting out there. So it is huge. And there's a dance of when you are a leader, particularly sometimes in a business. Sometimes I do think that there's timing to certain things, right? So like sometimes when you're going through the shit, sometimes if everyone's looking up to you, sometimes like, okay, maybe you got to get through the shit a little bit.
Hold it
together so that it doesn't fall apart, and then you can share with everybody, by the way, like I was scared shitless, but hey, this is how we got through it. And now you're being vulnerable but you were still able to sort of, pull through. So I think there is a timing sometimes that
absolutely,
I
think even you can relate that to families, like heads of families, right? Like parents, some of the families that I've witnessed in our community, like the parents that I know and slowly growing, especially over COVID, like more of our friends started having kids. Which tends to be later in life than maybe other groups of people. But I'm witnessing like how much emotion parents are sharing, and it's so beautiful, and their vulnerabilities, but they also still have to be parents and keep it together during the thing, but then they're also showing their kids that it's okay to have feelings and to have these experiences, right? And obviously age-appropriate ways. But it's just like a beautiful thing that I've been witnessing. And so same. Like, I still need to be the strength and the backbone of this family. Like, you need to be able to look up to me and feel safe with me, right? Like, my children need to feel safe with me, that I can protect them. And I'm still a human. I don't need you to be responsible for my emotions, but I need you to know that it's okay that I have them. Right?
Yeah.
And so that difference has been
What's
really
interesting
beautiful.
about parents and stuff like that too is outside of it, let's remove the past lives sort of type thing, but they're still doing it for the first time too. Totally. You know what I'm saying?
I love that you caveated that, by the way.
Like, so outside of the past life concept.
Past lives.
Yes, agreed.
Sure.
But they're in terms of this one right now.
This corporeal body, this life.
Correct.
Absolutely.
They're like your parents doing it for the first time. Your grandparents doing grandparenting for the first time. Son's doing studying. So it's like we're all just fucking trying this shit out, right?
Everyone's doing their best.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that goes into the acceptance and the leading with love. It's like, when you take away your expectations of humans, it doesn't mean people, like, if you enter into a contract of some type of relationship with someone, doesn't mean that there isn't a mutual, like, need sharing type of a thing. But if you say, wow, this person is always disappointing me because of X, instead of that, like, this person is actually just doing their fucking best. And there's some people in my life that I wouldn't have in my life if I didn't look at it that way. And it's not to say that they're less than or not, or that I'm better or anything like that, but there are certain things that I just know they're not capable of. And that's actually okay. Yeah. And I still want them in my life for so many other reasons. Totally. And so it's just like this narrative shift that's been really,
absolutely.
Really helpful for me.
So you said you want kids, you want a kid, you want a family. So in that, would you want that structure to also be poly, or do you think that you would go into more of a monogamous structure with your partner?
Great question. Monogamish structure.
Monogamish.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's poly in the idea of, like, again, I still have these other relationships that are very time dedicated, and it's not like an everyday thing, but if they need me, like, I am there for them, and vice versa. And if something happens with their kids, like, we have protocols in place for, like, how do we support one another through those experiences. And so poly in the idea of, like, I want my kids to be raised by these people, and, like, maybe we're not all living in the same place, like, with this specific group, but in the idea of, like, living in Costa Rica or somewhere else, like, I want my kids to have multiple parents and multiple role models and help, like, not even just role models, but, like, healthy relationship models. One thing, my dad is quite self-aware in certain moments, and I share this because it was so poignant for me. He told me that the only thing he ever regretted in parenting was that he didn't show us what a loving partnership was. And so doesn't mean he's not in love or he hasn't been in love, and he has had loving relationships, and they've had their own version of what that looks like for them, but I never had it as, like, a unit modeled for me. And so that's something that I think is super important as someone who didn't have it, and I've had to work backwards from that. Like, what is a healthy relationship? I want those models around my kids, and I want to model that with my own relationship when that happens, or my own partnership. And, you know, I also am calling in, and this is where, you know, I've been doing with my coach, like, I'm super interested and desiring to create and co-create a very co-devotional partnership, like co-ritualistic partnership with somebody, which includes ishing sometimes, monogamishing, but like, the idea that two people have so much reverence for each other and for the love that they have, and wake up and they do these rituals to commit to one another, and when you go to bed, you do these things, and it's like fucking work, but it's like a conscious choice to do that. And that people are like, oh, why are you single? It's like, because not everybody wants that type of relationship. Yeah. It's a lot of work. More rare, probably, right? It's a commitment, a serious commitment to each other. Yeah. Without attachment to, like, what it has to be at the end, of course. Like, obviously I want it to have kids and to have a long partnership with this person, wherever they are. And, you know, it takes a certain type of human to walk into that very awake and say, yes, I want that with you too. And so my life is fucking amazing. And when that partner shows up and is like, I'm ready for that too, I'm so here for it, But in the meantime, like, nothing is also missing from my life, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm very full.
Yeah.
Like I said, if I died in this moment, I would die fulfilled life. But the co-devotional like ritual thing is something that I've seen modeled for me many times over now in our community. And there are some couples that you're in their presence and it feels very divine. It honestly feels like there's like a God level like energy to it. And it's because they have fucking been through the fire together and they continue to sit and sit and sit together. And they work through like the deepest shadows and they don't hold things back. My friends Rachel and Johan call it the 3%. Like most people and most couples, like they hold back. They share 98% or 97% of what like feels comfortable, and they always hold back what they call the 3%. It doesn't have to be 3%.
That still sounds like probably way more.
Yeah.
The average 97.
Fair. That's what they call it. But I find that to be true, and it's like in the true depth of this type of partnership that I'm witnessing in them and others is like they just don't hold it back because it's like, this is the thing I think is really going to make me unlovable to you, and I'm so afraid to share it.
Yeah.
I'm so afraid to be vulnerable in this way. And then you hold it, and you sit, and you do the thing, and you do the work together.
And that goes beyond poly or traditional,
totally,
or gay or whatever.
All of it.
That it's just really about doing the work and the heart to heart and the commitment.
Absolutely. It's a recommitment.
It's not about what the structure of it is.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's so beautiful to just even be in the presence of. Like I'm just in awe of it because I didn't know that type of love or partnership could exist.
Well, it exists, and
it totally exists.
And you're gonna get it, and you're attracting it, and you're in the process. Fuck yeah, letting it out there. I love it. Justine, and going back a little bit towards the community aspect and just where everything's going with Web3, more and more digital. I actually recently saw a movie that's from a few years back, but like, do you remember Ready Player One? Did you watch that?
I actually never saw it, but
okay.
I love it, yeah.
So I do recommend that you check that out because it feels like it's a very realistic sort of potential future in a way. Where there's this idea of like the meta, it's like sort of like metaverse, but like, next level metaverse to where it's so real that, and then
are they living in it? Or?
So they're living in the real world.
Okay.
But the real world is so shitty because of like things that are happening with like climate change and floods and all these things where it's like it's way more chill to be in the metaverse, right? It's like way more enjoyable. Plus it feels so real. So it's like this combination of like almost like Twitch and the metaverse and like climate, so anyway, so how do you go about the building of real connection relationship? Because a lot of it seems like you said it has to be there, it has to be the touching, it has to be this heart to heart.
How do you build connection in digital spaces? Yeah, that's a really great question and something that I've been working actively on the last year and a half since I started professionally being a community builder and community alchemist consultant. Almost all of my clients where I'm head of community are in Web3 somehow. It just happened really beautifully that way. And a world that I was really afraid of touching, like Web3, blockchain, NFTs, all of it. And I love technology, but there felt like some sort of like gated experience that I just like couldn't get into. And it just felt so overwhelming and all the language and everything. And then I was thrust into it. And I was like, oh shit, I got to catch up. And honestly, at some point in the near future, it's not even going to be Web3. It's going to be just the internet. Like that's just going to be the way that we operate, right? And for now, there's this separation because it feels new. But at some point, all of this is going to be very normal and commonplace, and people will be operating straight up in the metaverses. And
how do you think that's gonna? What do you mean by that?
Well, I just think that this technology is an AI. Look at AI, right? Like, going back to the Costa Rica thing and the farming and schools and things, like I'm hoping AI takes away the things that nobody actually wants to do and frees up all of the people who are doing those types of jobs and more of us to actually like experience life and not have to worry so much about like more money, like all the that sort of drive. Like it'll give us space if we like shifted it in the right direction to actually like create more art and like farm and like connect to the earth again, like all those types of things. And so that's kind of my hope for technology and AI. I'm not going to say I don't think that's what's going to happen because I am so open to being surprised by this world and this universe, but my hope would be that's the direction it goes. But what I've been doing in Web3 is like still creating as much connection as I possibly can. Like most spaces, like Discord, for example, right? Almost everybody is anonymous. They're behind a screen name. You never even see their face ever.
Yeah.
A lot of the other communities, our community members like do interact on different social platforms, but they still like see who they're talking to in some way. But for me, it's like creating programming, creating like human touch points as many times as possible that either shows their faces, connects them to me. Like I have one-on-one, I onboard everybody that comes into community, any community that I'm in. So they get a human face like right away, even on Discord. And then also for the ones that allow it, like creating in real life IRL programming when possible, and like making that a global experience to the effect that it's possible as well. Because you just can't lose that. Like that, that is what community is. Obviously there's the shared interest, the shared value system. These are the rules and guidelines, the safety that creates for freedom of expression within the boundaries of that container. And people want to know, and they get invested when they actually like connect with that with another person. Absolutely. And you just can't take that away. Even in like I in my experience so far, it's just there's no replacement for it still.
There really isn't.
There isn't. And so in the metaverses and things, you know, why are video games so popular? They're still really fucking connected. Like people are on teams, individuals they're in their room by themselves, but they're always like talking to people. They have friends. Some of their best friends are people they've never met.
Yeah, that's wild.
Right? Like
that's
the experience that's going to be in the
metaverse.
That's my best guess, is that the metaverses will be like that.
Yeah.
People can still
there's
you.
It's like there's connection that we're not used to. And so again
it just evolves.
And we're guinea pigging too. So we're gonna find out what happens.
We're just throwing spaghetti at the wall right now in Web3, you know, like all this new tech AI, and just seeing what sticks. Hopefully nothing sticks and is a giant monster, although if you ask some friends of mine, AI for sure needs a lot of boundaries and guidelines, and I totally agree with them. But yeah, I think that still relying on the things like that work. It doesn't matter how much technology is advanced. We still go home for dinner, right? Like there's certain things that still make us feel human. I don't know, despite all the advances, I guess. Yeah. I just don't think that that's going to change, and it hasn't changed in my experience community building in Web3 so far. Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. How do you navigate conflict within your communities? Oh, that's a great question. That actually came up very recently, and a couple of times during COVID, actually, because we had people like using the thread, for example, like it was like COVID on one side, COVID on the other side, like mask, no mask, vaccines, no vaccines, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And they were having these, open conflicts in the chat, and I was like, hey guys, these are super valid points. This particular chat is not the space. In that case, it was like, this is not the space to have this conversation, and I encourage you to take this offline and have like a proper forum, whatever it was. Yeah. Have an event around it, like create an experience where people can feel like they can share their because it is important to have that. It is important to have the discussion. It's just that particular platform was not the space for it. Yeah. And some people were like, Justine did not come down hard enough, and other people were like, you did the right thing. Right. So I feel like I couldn't please everybody in that particular situation. There's other situations where it's happened a few times where, like in a relationship, right? Like two people break up, they have their own experiences as a couple. It leaks out into the community, into their friend groups, and it can get really messy. And I've been asked as a community leader to sort of excommunicate people before, or to step in. And I'm like, one, it's none of my business unless that person is egregiously violent or abusive or something like that. That's obviously there's certain levels of obviousness of, okay, we're not going to associate with you anymore. But also telling that person that this is the thing. I personally don't believe, and it's happened quite a lot in my circles to some extent, where something happens like that, and then people just stop talking to that person without actually even letting them know what the reasoning is or what happened. And so that person, even if they might have committed something that feels worthy of that type of treatment, they don't know. They're left in the dark. And going to the sense of belonging before complete icing out, like, oh my God, my world just collapsed around me. And then they have like a serious problem because they don't have a clue what just happened. Because it might have been related to something in this case that I'm thinking of that they don't even know, like why everybody else is suddenly not talking to them.
Yeah.
And so if you're a community leader or someone, even just a fucking friend or someone, you know, that has a relationship with a person, like you still owe it to them, in my opinion, to tell them why you're deciding X, Y, and Z, right? Sure. You might not even be like excommunicate or not going to be their friend. You might be like, hey, I heard that this is happening, or like, I witnessed this behavior. This is not okay with me. We can't be friends until X, or like, I'm taking a break until I see that you've worked on X, Y, and Z. Like all of those things are totally fine. And I've stepped in and done that a few times with my own friends. And it's happened to me once before. And I would expect my friends to do that for me if it happens again. Absolutely. And I just feel like there's this level of like, in society today that we just sort of like, it's okay to just cut people out of your life. Just cut them out. I see that I read advice columns every morning, actually. It gives me a lot of perspective on the world and what the world is thinking about. And it hurts me so much to my core. Obviously, violence, all that, like, there's reasons for that, for sure, and silence is golden in that situation. But in most cases, like, my parents were abusive to me when I was young. They didn't treat my sister, whatever it is. We all have it. All of those things are true. And we're probably really awful to experience. And just being like, I'm not going to ever talk to my parents again. Totally your prerogative to do. But in my opinion, you still need to have the conversation with them first of like, hey, I've noticed that you keep violating X, Y, and Z boundary or blah, 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 whatever it is. And if this continues, I'm going to have to take space, or like, we're not going to talk, or whatever the thing is. But I find that people are just like not having those conversations at all. And so even though it's really difficult for me as someone who was so conflict averse for so many years, because I just cried at the drop of a hat, I've had to have a lot of those community conversations on both sides of like, why are you spreading this, rumor or this thing, or like what actually happened? And like, there's two sides and then three sides of every story, right? And it's been a personal challenge for me to just want to have the difficult conversation, but it's such good practice.
I bet.
And two, because so much gets lost in the like he said, she said.
Yeah.
And like, is this actually affecting the community at large, or is this a thing that happened between two people that should actually stay between two people, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not all rainbows and butterflies.
Not all rainbows and butterflies. And sometimes it leaks into business, right? Like there's a few examples of that in the community as well. And like people, in all business senses have different relationships, and you might be a different type of friend than you're a business partner or a business collaborator. Like people have different personalities a lot of the time for like how they operate in different spaces. And, I still have plenty of friends that probably maybe are different types of people when they're in business. And I don't actually have that experience with them.
Yeah.
But, people are multidimensional. Again, barring like really egregious things, I don't think that someone should not be my friend because maybe they're like a shark in business or something, whatever that means. Well, if they're like deliberately like polluting, like I'm just putting my toxic waste into the air, like again, egregious things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I also think that by striking a friendship or by being around certain people too, they may have their eyes open to different things,
But
right?
that's having the conversation. Hey, I noticed that you're doing this thing. My friend told me that you've been treating them this way. Like, this is not okay. Just because you have a contract doesn't mean you're not a human first, right?
Yeah,
like you have the conversation.
Absolutely.
And actually continuing to be their friend and holding them accountable in some ways is a lot, I think, worth a lot more than just being like, we can't be friends.
Yeah,
like if you have the capacity and you still love this person and you're just noticing something that like deserves attention, hey, we're going to come up with a plan for this. Like, presuming the person is receptive, obviously, and if not, then you make the decision to like take space or whatever. That's all of that is good and right.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there's so much less like accountability.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, I get a little heated about it because it's happened a few times recently.
Yeah.
And it's been it's hurt me to witness actually.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and then you get reminded of all the beauty that comes from it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, are you seeing a lot of like impact-driven businesses that are coming from relationships that you've put together and in communities? Are you seeing that also happen a lot? You're just seeing new movements, brands, community things.
Totally.
Yeah.
All the LA community Friends with is full of people supporting each other's businesses and creating their own business relationships. Like Giraffes, all their sponsors are coming from within our community, right? And like tendrils of, oh, but this is my other friend's company. It's like, Living Prana, a community built brand. Liquid Death, Peter, he is in my Summit community. Like we all support each other, like all these things. They're all trying to change the world in some way.
They're all impact driven.
They're all impact driven, and they're recognizing other people in the space that they're like, oh, this is connected to somebody I know and trust. Great.
Yeah.
Now they're forming their own partnerships,
I
which
love
is
that.
amazing. It's been happening all over the place.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Justine, how do you want to be remembered from all of this that you're building? What do you want? Like, how are you being remembered? What is sticking? Whether it is when you're an old lady or gone.
Yeah. Besides, I hope that people remember I was a mermaid.
Okay, mermaid. That's one. I'm Sebastian over here, the crab in the Little Mermaid. So we come from the same movie.
We do come from the same movie. I love it. I think that I want people to remember.
Wow, we have an alarm going off.
What I want people to remember about me is that I led with love and that I created more love in this world. That's what I want.
Created more love in the world.
Yeah.
I love that.
I hope that I'm not perfect at it at all, and it is a lifetime practice. But I told you in that moment of witnessing death, the only thing that matters to me is creating more love. And with every action that I do, I try intentionally with awareness to create more love with it.
I love that.
Not perfect, but that is my goal. And so I want people to know that about me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Justine. I
Yeah.
love that. What are 2 traits that a conscious leader must embody today?
I'm just going to keep repeating myself. Well, one, I think is empathy. Absolutely. I think it's lacking in a lot of leadership, and mostly because you have to stamp out that part of you to make certain decisions, I think. And I don't know, honestly, what the middle ground of that is, but there is a lot of practice to let there. And then, heart, just like remembering that people are humans and connecting heart to heart. I always call myself a chorasexual. Like people are demisexual, like their minds have to connect. Like I have to connect with someone's heart to feel like in love with them.
Yeah.
And so I think that if more leaders saw their, employees, their colleagues, their business partners, et cetera, with just as humans, just as another human to human.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, Justine.
Yeah.
Well,
so
obviously,
simple.
yeah, of course. Well, obviously, I'm going to have, your links in the show notes and in the YouTube notes and all that fun stuff. But is there anything that you're particularly excited about right now that you want to share with people or lead them to, or just you wanted to?
Yeah. The communities that I'm working with, I'd love everybody to check out the Grateful Giraffes. I would love them to check out Asraya, which is another community-driven project that I'm working on with someone in our community, Kenny. Very exciting. People I'm want to build an island with, this is the community that I'm going to have my village with, which is very exciting. And I'm also Quantum Temple, which is putting cultural heritage on the blockchain. Also social impact and environmental driven impact, which is bringing my old life as an archaeologist into community building. Yeah. Head of community, hiring with an archaeology background. I think I was the only person on the planet. Actually,
I'm excited to check that out.
So all of those are really exciting. And anybody who's looking to build a community or build more community programming, access their own communities organically, I have a consulting business doing exactly that with community.
Beautiful.
So,
wow.
Yeah,
I wonder how many times we said community on this podcast right now. I love it.
If we drank elixirs, because no one drinks, or we don't drink at least.
Just take a shot of an elixir every time.
Ginger shot every time. Yeah.
Microdose every time you say community. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, also a shout out to the sponsor of today's show, which is the Kin, actually, which is this community, which is a membership network, accelerator and workspace for conscious entrepreneurs, which I absolutely love, which is beautiful.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big supporter of Oliver.
Yeah, Justine, keep doing you. You truly are a conscious leader. You're a beautiful human. I love what you're doing. So please keep being you, and thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Sebastian. It's so great. I love it. Thank you.
Yes.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. It takes a lot to put these things together, but I truly love doing it. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, and you listen to it on audio podcast, please take some time to give it a review. It would really mean a lot to me. And if you watch the video, please go ahead and just click subscribe and share it with somebody that you think would like it. It would really mean the world to me, and it helps keep the show alive. Visit sebastiannom.com for more content And follow me on Instagram at SebNaum. That's SEBNAUM. Thanks again for spending your time with me. I know it is valuable. I hope you have a great rest of the day and week. Till next time.